Howdy folks, and welcome to part 2 of my little Tale of Two Trilogy experiment. If you haven't already, please be sure to go back and check out my video on Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, not least because Ubisoft just grabbed the domain name for a sequel right after I said they should, and I now have to cope with the responsibility of major corporations apparently doing my bidding. Anyway, on to Tomb Raider. It's a bit of a series of trilogies, is Tomb Raider. First off, we had the excellent original trilogy, although sadly age hasn't been particularly kind to something that was so pioneering when it came out. Then we had Legend, Anniversary and Underworld. I think they call it the Legends trilogy. But by that point, there was another king making its ascension up the action-adventure throne in the form of a little PlayStation series called Uncharted. Also, side note, why don't we call these games action-adventures? Why don't we call them Indiana Jones-likes? It'd be so much more descriptive. Everyone would know what we meant. Anyway, Square Enix did the sensible thing, and how often do you get to say that, and gave the Tomb Raider series a bit of a rest. Then it copied its competitor's homework and put the whole thing out with its own artwork on it. Shocking to say this, but the result, the first game in the Tomb Raider 2013 trilogy, also known as the You Can Do This trilogy, or the Beat the Tar Out of Lara Croft and Call It an Origin Story trilogy, and it's really pretty damn good. Let's find out why. Let's take a look at the graphics. Well, first off, I wasn't joking about the game really kicking the ever-holy tar out of Lara basically whenever it gets the opportunity to. Considering the last trilogy had Lara off searching for Excalibur and then hunting for the Norse gods, Tomb Raider 2013 really wanted to bring the series down to earth with a thud, and Lara's character design is one of the first places that shows. Also, please note, I'm not going to sit here and discuss her breasts. It's been done to death. You don't need me to tell you what a character's bosoms look like. Anyway, ignoring the fact that you could easily play a drinking game every time Lara should have been killed by a fall she takes, and incidentally this is a pretty fun game to play with basically any action movie or action video game, she just spends the entire time looking dirty, injured, and overall just bloody miserable. Hell, look at her face here after she takes a beating. Even I winced. This is kind of a weird thing to say, but she also has some awesome cuts that you can see bleeding throughout the game that really do add to the atmos of the character. I hope these become scars in Rise of the Tomb Raider, but I don't remember if they do. In fact, the entire game has this darker, more realistic tone to it, but for all that it's gorgeous and it's extremely well realised. Other than maybe a little bit of clipping when Lara's climbing ropes, I didn't notice a single graphical bug the entire time. The fire and water effects both look incredible. In fact, honestly, sometimes you look at it and you're kind of hoping it's water. Lara's supposed to be walking through this stuff with open wounds. Mind you, I suppose, Tomb Raider: The Shadow of Sepsis probably wouldn't have been a million-copy seller. The game handles its scale extremely well, and some of the camera work is excellent and downright vertigo-inducing, right around the time that's what Lara's actually supposed to be feeling. And this is something they get right multiple times. There just isn't more to say on this front, honestly. The graphics don't put a foot wrong. Look at the damn things. I suppose worthy as a side note, the game is also rock solid when it runs. I alt-tab out of games when I'm reviewing them to take notes, and I normally give a sort of 1 to 2 crashes allowance before I start mentioning it. This didn't even wobble at any point. Kudos. Next, let's take a look at the game's environment and story. So the story of the game was advertised prior to its release as an origin story for Lara and how she became the Tomb Raider, and I'll be honest, that's not really what it is. I mean, not for nothing, but it takes us 2 or 3 hours to even see the first tomb, and they're certainly not the focus. We did see Lara go from this sort of wide-eyed innocent archaeologist to a stone-cold killer, but to be honest, that takes basically a single cutscene, and all I could think about during it was Ludo Pipti-Squib Disco Biscuits, thank you very much Mr. Jim Sterling. That said, there are a couple of story beats going on here, and one is handled better than the other. I'll cover the poorer one first. Lara and a bunch of her friends go on an expedition and get shipwrecked on an island from which there is no escape. Lara's friend gets kidnapped, as indeed friends in video games are wont to do, and she has to rescue them and escape the island. Then this plot basically stops for like a good 2/3 of the game. Oh, we see her friends. Lara's brought a home movie collection with her, because it's the first thing you grab when a shipwreck happens, I guess. And we get to watch videos of these captured folks, but that's it. We get to watch videos of them. I don't see these people for the most part, I don't interact with them, and once we rescue them, one of them's a jerk, one of them looks like the love child of Scott from Thunderbirds, one of them looks like he's going to turn on us, then he sort of does and then just dies. I couldn't be less invested in whether or not a bunch of people left an island than I could if these people were on Survivor, which come to think of it is exactly what they sound like the cast for. The other plot, however, focuses on the history of the island itself, and indeed I'd say the island probably comes off on its own as a better overall character than any of the folks I'm supposed to be rescuing. It's got this ancient history on it relating to a Japanese queen, but it's also got clear evidence that it's been settled and resettled, with one of the most recent settlements being during World War II. So there's all this layered geography, and it really makes the history you're given, yet through the usual audio logs, but also in murals, items you find, and stuff being said both by Lara and the presumably cannibals you're overhearing, really have this genuinely interesting feel about it. The actual plot for this part of the story isn't all that special. It involves one of the members of your shipwreck crew being a chosen one of sorts for the locals to sacrifice, and the main antagonist is this kind of high priest character that's a real mustache twirler. But it all comes together because the island itself has this real overall menacing feeling of no one leaves. It's certainly much better than the cast of Love Island going on in the B-plot. Next, let's take a look at sound. So this is a new kind of more organised format that I'm trying out for the review this week, and I've given sound its own section here because the sound in this game is so good. It might not be something I do all the time, but just take a quick listen to this one here. See, I love how the echoing, unclear direction of the sound just makes everything seem to swirl around you, and when the game wants to, like it does in this next clip, the wind sounds downright oppressive. So yeah, this is not going to be the longest section here, but the game did good. When sound's good, I think you notice it. When sound's terrible, I think you notice it. And if you ever don't see this section appearing on a review, it's because the sound is functional, essentially. Moving on. Let's take a look at the gameplay. Okay. So we've been talking for several minutes here about how the game looks, sounds, and tells stories. But what do you actually do? Well, you've been watching for several minutes also, so hopefully you don't think we're discussing the latest real-time strategy here, but yeah. Action-adventure is the very non-descriptive title these things so often go by. We've got plenty of the usual running, jumping, climbing. We've got a Metroidvania thing going on with the item pickups, and there's this option to backtrack and open up some areas you missed, but to be honest, I never actually did. You see, the thing is, we're doing the item upgrades thing, which is fine, but you can't miss any because they're all essential to the plot, which means the upgrades fall back onto the weapons, and, well, the weapons just start off feeling so powerful anyway. The pistol and the bow both behave like bloody sniper rifles, and headshots are devastating, which now that I've said it out loud sounds like a really stupid thing to say. But we also have this experience point system, I guess they're just mandatory in games at this point, and one of its chains has its most advanced tiers give you headshot reticules, as though we needed some help getting headshots with this. Look at this! There's a whole bunch of collectibles as well, and there are these challenges, but honestly, only the story-related collectibles are worth getting. All of that aside though, I actually really enjoy the gameplay when we are doing story progression. All of the platforming feels spot on control-wise, and when everything decides to randomly explode, which happens a fair amount, and we're doing this whole spectacle thing, it really feels like you're just playing an action movie. I've seen complaints that these sections are just glorified QuickTime events, but I don't really buy into that honestly, because I'm in full control of the character, I just have an obvious objective. If QuickTime events are this, then so is every single action you take in any 90s side-scroller. They have the same basic effect after all. I will say, some of the spectacle in these events is lost should you happen to die during one of them. You reload at the start and, well, this sort of thing's just never quite as good the second time around. I don't know how you fix that issue, but still, it's there. For all my complaining about the guns, mind you, the actual gameplay around them does work well too. You're fairly squishy, but your health regenerates quickly. You start most of the fights in stealth, and the game gives you a couple of basic tools for this, but it's obvious that it doesn't expect you to stay this way for very long. You can see that you're in stealth because Lara will automatically keep this cool, lower profile, and when she decides to go noisy, it comes off feeling perfectly organic. The only thing about the gameplay that actually annoyed me were the radio exposition moments. Game developers, I've got some news that might shock you. People can run when they're using a radio. Yeah, I know. Settle yourselves down, have a cup of tea, whatever. Just, you need to find something for loading screens that's not this. Also, don't try elevators. Mass Effect tried it. That didn't go so well either. Anyway, moving on. Random stuff. So, this is my first review with sections, as I mentioned, and if I'm going to do the standard ones, I wanted to start off with one in place where I could just throw out some random comments and questions to. A stronger reviewer might seamlessly fit these into the review, but they might also not have just had their spell check tell them that seamlessly isn't spelled with two E's. So, let's pretend there's not one here and get on with this. First off, anyone else hate it when your character is dumb in cutscenes? Like, seriously, Lara, look at this. What was your plan? You know those handguns you've got? Maybe use one of those? Anyway. Secondly, why can I light my torch from this brazier, but not from the campfire I'm stood right next to? Yep, I know I get the lighter early on, but still, this makes no sense. Third, I'm perfectly okay with shaky cam, but this looks like someone just fed an elderly cameraman some G Fuel, so maybe we don't quite need all of this. And finally, what the hell happened here? So, to be honest, this reboot really hit the ground running strong. It's got some problems here and there, but overall it was a really good, memorable experience, and I remember being excited when I heard the second one was coming out. I haven't started playing the second one at the time of this review, but if my memory's correct, that's not where this trilogy starts to develop problems either. We'll just have to wait and see. Speaking of places where trilogies did get stuff wrong, tune in on Monday and we are going to take a look at Prince of Persia Warrior Within, which I am determined to call Wind Waker for some reason. But I digress. See you all then, folks. If you enjoyed this video, please do drop a like on it and subscribe. If you would like to follow me on Twitter and see what I'm doing, you can do so on the link currently on your screens. Also, I do have a Patreon set up, just in case you'd like to help me keep the lights on around here. There are no minimum tiers or anything. You can do that at the link on your screen as well currently. Please do go and take a look. I will see you on Monday, folks. Until then, peace. I'm out.